Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Evelyn Vickery. We're honoured to acknowledge Mr Eric Easterbrook, Chairman of Legacy Australia and the accompanying delegation, and Colonel Susan Newhouse, Member of the Council of the Australian War Memorial. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students representing St Anne's Catholic Primary School, Strathfield South, New South Wales. If able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Hector Thomas Nugent. Hector Nugent, known as Tom, was born in 1896 to Edgar and Margaret Nugent of Bendigo, Victoria. Tom was educated at the Marist Brothers College and went on to work for the Bendigo City Council. In 1911, Australia brought in a compulsory military training scheme which saw Tom Nugent obliged to attend training events for junior cadets. Obliged to do 32 hours of drill a year, Nugent missed 13 hours in the first year, and in the summer of 1913 and 1914, only managed to attend 8 of 32 hours. He and 3 other boys were made an example of, prosecuted in court for their lack of attendance. During the trial, Nugent's commanding officer said that they had given the officers more trouble than any other trainees. Nugent was sentenced to serve 14 days training with the Royal Australian Garrison Artillery at the Port Phillip Fortress, and there is no record of his causing further trouble. War broke out in Europe within months of Tom Nugent's return to Bendigo. While Nugent did not rush to enlist, one of his mates did. Private William Darwin wrote to Nugent from the trenches of Gallipoli. Lacking paper, he wrote on the back of a jam tin label to say, "I have been here right from the first, and all of the letters are censored. I cannot tell you how many Turks I have killed, but you leave that to me. I will fix that part up all right." Tom Nugent enlisted around the time of the letter's arrival. Aged 18, he brought written permission from his parents in order to enlist. He underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas, with reinforcements to the 7th Battalion in March 1916. Private Nugent was first sent to Egypt, where the AIF was undergoing a period of training and expansion following the evacuation from Gallipoli. As part of this process, he was transferred to the 5th Pioneer Battalion and continued training in the desert for 2 months before leaving for France. Not long after arriving in France, Nugent's military discipline again wavered, and he was charged with quitting the ranks without permission. Despite this indiscretion, Tom Nugent was proving to be an able soldier. One man remembered how his brave spirits and bearing, when in his worst moments, were a matter of admiration to his officers and fellow comrades. He was always bright and cheerful, in spite of the shells that ever fell. He finished his sentence of 7 days field punishment 2 days before going into action near Fromelles. Although the battle was a tragedy, with more than 5,500 Australian casualties, Nugent came through unscathed and continued to train with the 5th Division as it rebuilt from the disaster. By late 1916, the 5th Pioneer Battalion was on the Somme near the French village of Longueval. Winter had set in and constant rain made trenches a muddy morass. The pioneers, charged with construction and maintenance of the trenches and roads, among other duties, became demoralised, as everything they did was hampered or even destroyed by the sucking mud. The battalion's war diary records that the men feel they are working to no purpose and get very exhausted. On the 26th of November, Private Tom Nugent was with his company digging a sap from the front line of trenches to the second line. Driver Punch, a mate of Nugent's, later described how there was a hiss and a roar, and a shell had caught 3 of our brave mates, which killed them instantaneously. Private Tom Nugent was one of the men killed, together with Private Ike Cocking and Private Jack Thompson. A 4th man was wounded in the blast. A parcel from a family friend arrived on the Western Front for Tom Nugent after he had died, and it was given to his mate, John Drummond. Prompted to write to the sender, Drummond said, "We were mates in Australia, and I was with him when Ike and Jack Thompson fell. It was a great loss to me." Today, the three men lie side by side in the AIF burial ground at Grass Lane, Fleur. Tom Nugent's grave bears the simple epitaph, "Lord, have mercy on his soul." He was 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Hector Thomas Nugent, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.